Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for Wight and Wight Sense, welcoming you to this week's Talking News on Friday the 7th of March. As I'm recording this, I'm getting ready to go to Winchester this evening. We've been nominated for an award with the police for the work that we did with the VIP, the Visual Impairment Protocol, last year. So we won't find out till tonight if we're the winners, but we're down to the last three, I know that. We also did get presented with an award last week with the Changemakers Award, which I think I mentioned, for equality, diversity and inclusion. We've got one more to come up in March, which is Isle of Wight Radio Charity of the Year. We don't know who we're competing against, but again, we know we're down to the last three. I'd like to draw your attention to the coffee morning next Wednesday on the 12th, because Vision Aid are coming over. They have a full range of digital equipment and phones and magnifiers and all sorts to help people with a visual impairment. And also we're going to set Emma up in the same room, which will be the coffee morning room at the back. And Emma will have on display lots of very inexpensive gadgets that we have collected, mainly from Amazon, things like anti-cut gloves and little wiggly things that go around the bottom of the pan to help you position it on the stove correctly. So it'd be lovely to see as many people as possible next Wednesday, the 12th of March, at the coffee morning to meet with both Vision Aid and Emma, who is our apprentice VRS. Everybody stay safe. Lisa, thank you. CEO, Site for Wight and Wight Sense.
Here is this week's charity news, week commencing 7th of March. Swimming at Medina is on Monday between 1:15pm and 2pm. We have the whole pool, so whether you wish to swim lanes or just have gentle exercise in the pool, you'll be made very welcome. The cost is £6 and transport is available, although limited. All members are very welcome to join.
The Wight Sense Hearing Cafe is on Monday at the End of the Line Cafe, Freshwater, and during the morning the catch-up and feedback session will take place. The morning is between 10:30am and 12pm. Karen and Karen will be joining you.
Yoga at Millbrooke House on Tuesday between 1:45pm and 2:45pm. The cost is £4, including refreshments afterwards. This group is now full, but if you wish to put your name down on the waiting list, please call the office.
Coffee and chat is on Wednesday starting at 10am until 11:30am. The cost is £2 to include drinks and cake. Staff are on hand to help with any queries and to demonstrate equipment. We will be joined this week by Vision Aid. They will be demonstrating their digital equipment as advertised in the flyer enclosed with your newsletter. Emma will also be demonstrating kitchen equipment, for example, cutter-assistant gloves, pull cord chopper and pan pickles. The morning is open to everyone, so please come along.
Our March Eye on social is on Wednesday at 2pm. We will welcome Tim Wander, who is giving a talk about Bembridge Fort. The cost is £3 to include refreshments. This group is open to everyone, members, volunteers and friends of the charity.
On Friday, the East Cows Together is held at Curve Community Library between 10am and 12pm. Karen will be there to answer any questions and offer advice.
Our fundraising for Easter is going very well, and we thank all our wonderful knitters for taking part. This year our Easter novelties will be on sale in various locations across the island, as well as Millbrooke House, for a suggested donation of £2.50p.
Our monthly 100 Club has spare balls available. If anyone would like to buy a ball, it is £2 per month, or £24 for the full year. The more balls in the draw, the higher the prize money each month. If you would like to take part in our monthly draw, please call the office. This is part of our fundraising activities.
This is an article from the Island Echo, read by Terry. Hover Travel boss heading to Red Funnel as new operations director. Red Funnel has announced that Neil Chapman, the outgoing boss of Hover Travel, is to become the company's new operations director. Neil will join the cross-Solent operator this May, following a rigorous recruitment process, replacing Leanna Lakes, who joined Red Funnel in 2020, as she moves on to the RNLI as Chief Operating Officer. It was announced at the start of February that Hover Travel's board of directors had agreed that Neil would step down as the company's managing director. It follows a turbulent period for the firm, with redundancies announced back in December and significant cuts to services revealed just weeks later in January. When Neil joined the company in 2010, Hover Travel was transporting around 830,000 passengers between Southsea and the Isle of Wight each year. In 2016, in a year when the operator carried 788,119 passengers, Neil expressed a desire to build on passenger numbers, but 9 years on, the reality is quite the opposite. Just 590,000 passengers are now being flown across the Solent, a drop of 28% during Neil's tenure. The 56-year-old now swaps Portsmouth for Southampton, joining Red Funnel at a time when they are also in troubled waters. Fran Collins, chief executive at Red Funnel, has said, "We're delighted to welcome Neil to Red Funnel. He brings with him a passion for the Isle of Wight, following 15 years of working collaboratively with island businesses, customers and residents, and a deep understanding of the requirements of operating lifeline services." His experience in the travel and maritime industry gives him an excellent understanding in managing the reliability of our existing fleet, alongside progressing our exciting plans for new tonnage. These include our new partnership with Artemis, which will add a zero-emission electric e-foiling passenger ferry to our high-speed service, as well as the design and build of a more modern and sustainable vehicle ferry fleet. We know that choosing the right candidate to support our future ambitions is critical to Red Funnel, our customers and our stakeholders, and we have undertaken a stringent and rigorous recruitment process over the past few months. We've also ensured full compliance with the Competition Act 1998 in making Neil's appointment. We look forward to Neil joining our team in May and getting to know the business from the inside out. Neil Chapman has said, "Spending time on the island regularly, I understand it is essential for islanders to have access to a reliable service, and Red Funnel has a unique responsibility as a lifeline service provider. At the heart of my role will be ensuring safety and reliability. This includes the existing operations, but I am also excited to be involved in developing the future fleet, ensuring Red Funnel has a sustainable future to continue serving the island community."
This article, read by Howard from the Isle of Wight Radio, is concerned with a Cowes Enterprise College Resilience Challenge. A team of sixth form students from Cowes Enterprise College, part of Ormiston Academies Trust, has won the island-wide Resilience Challenge in an action-packed 2-day event. Working against the clock, students tackled a series of real-world challenges and presented their well-thought-out plan to representatives from the government, police, ambulance service, fire service, Coast Guard, Isle Met Office and Southern Water. The winning team, consisting of students Dylan, Hope, Will, Finley, Caden and Skylar were tasked with developing a comprehensive emergency response strategy for the Isle of Wight in the event of a catastrophic flood. The fast-thinking students demonstrated exceptional teamwork, problem-solving, and strategic thinking. Competing against 9 other schools, the team showcased their ability to think quickly under pressure, impressing an esteemed panel of judges. The competition aligns with Cowes Enterprise College's Educate for Life vision, equipping students with the skills, resilience, and confidence to tackle real-world challenges. By engaging in experiences like this, students develop the adaptability and problem-solving abilities that will serve them well in their futures, whether in further education, employment, or beyond. Rachel Kitley, principal of Cowes Enterprise College, said, "We are incredibly proud of our sixth form team for their outstanding performance in the Resilience Challenge. Their ability to think critically, work collaboratively, and remain composed under pressure is truly commendable. This achievement reflects the dedication and ambition of our students, and we're delighted to see them recognised for their talents."
This is an article from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Terry. Call to honour island heroes of Dunkirk with Newport Harbour Memorial Cairn given green light. Marking the 85th anniversary of Operation Dynamo, islanders are being urged to remember the island men who risked everything. In May 1940, as the world stood on the brink of defeat, 6 humble island motor barges were quietly commandeered from Portsmouth Dockyard. Their mission? To cross perilous waters to Dunkirk and rescue stranded British soldiers under relentless enemy fire. Against the odds, all 18 brave men from the Isle of Wight and Portsmouth returned home safely, having helped save countless lives in what became known as the Miracle of Dunkirk. Their courage and sacrifice form part of our island's extraordinary, yet often overlooked, contribution to this pivotal moment in history. Now, 85 years on, we have the chance to properly honour these local heroes. A permanent memorial cairn, crafted from island stone and installed near Newport Harbour, has been granted planning permission. The lasting tribute will refurbish and relocate the original 1990 brass plaque listing the brave crews and their ships, add a new plaque telling the story of the island's role in Operation Dynamo, and create a place of reflection for generations to come. Organisers of the project are now urgently seeking £4,000 funding to bring this memorial to life. This is our moment to remember them, not just as names on a neglected plaque, but as ordinary men who achieved something extraordinary.
Article read by Howard from the Island Echo is concerned with people power in Ventnor. Passionate locals have taken matters into their own hands to get a Ventnor road reopened nearly 18 months after a wall collapse forced its closure by Island Roads. It was in October 2023 that Bath Road, which runs from the Esplanade to Belgrave Road, was closed to all traffic when a garden wall collapsed, resulting in debris being spewed across the carriageway. Fed up with the continuing lack of action, which is having a detrimental effect on Isle of Wight businesses and residents alike, local man Carl Hunter, accompanied by friends Ellis and Mark, have begun efforts to clear the road in the hope that it can reopen in time for the important summer season. The trio arrived at Bath Road and got straight to cutting back vegetation that has grown wildly, making quick progress in the glorious spring sunshine. They also began placing parts of the wall to one side to be used for the reinstatement at a later date to remove the remaining earth and foliage, but they've stopped short of removing the entire mound to ensure that it's not supporting the land behind, something it's hoped Island Roads will support in investigating. The action today has captured the attention of both the Isle of Wight Council and Island Roads, who attended the site, and it is thought a few feathers have been ruffled. A legal battle continues over who is responsible for the wall and therefore the clear operation and repair, although it's understood neither the landowner nor Island Roads objected to Carl's, Mark's and Ellis's voluntary efforts. The Isle of Wight Council previously served notice to the landowner to enforce the repair works, but faced an appeal. The matter is still working its way through the court process with no hearing date yet set. Speaking exclusively to Island Echo this morning, Carl said, "Island Roads is fast becoming one of the most unpopular companies serving the island, just behind Red Funnel and Whitelink. Islanders are starting to question some of the unnecessary work Island Roads are undertaking, yet matters like Bath Road have been left unresolved for years, much to the detriment of local businesses and residents. The cost to resolve this issue will likely now be insignificant compared to the total economic loss to Ventnor's seafront. There were many better ways Island Roads could have approached this issue and got the road reopened. They could have cleared the site and, if needed, applied an inexpensive temporary fix until a court concluded if Island Roads is liable for this wall or not. If a third party is found liable, then they could invoice that party. Once we're finished, it's my hope that the road can be reopened in the very near future." Addressing concerns that the wall could collapse again, Carl has a common sense response. If the wall collapses again, then close the road again. However, nothing has moved here for 18 months, and I suspect we could at least enjoy use of the road until the end of the summer. However, hopefully, the wall will be repaired by then. Huge progress was made at Bath Road today, showing what 3 men can achieve in just a few hours. Island Roads and the Isle of Wight Council have been approached for a statement, with a response expected on Wednesday.
This is an article from the Island Echo, read by Terry. Labour South East backs urgent ferry reform for the Isle of Wight. Labour members have overwhelmingly backed a motion calling for urgent regulation of cross-Solent ferry services. The motion, proposed at the Labour South East Regional Conference in Portsmouth on Sunday the 2nd of March, by Sandown Town Councillor and Lake Parish Councillor Jenny Hicks, highlighted the excessive cost and lack of accountability in the current ferry system, which is operated as a duopoly. Jenny Hicks presented shocking figures showing that the cost of an average vehicle return crossing is £117, equivalent to 60% of the average weekly disposable income on the island. In the summer, this rises to £330, or 180% of a week's disposable income. Speakers supporting the motion included delegates from New Forest East, Isle of Wight West and Southampton City Council leader Lorna Filker. The motion emphasised the essential role ferry services play in connecting Isle of Wight residents to healthcare, education and employment. It called for immediate government action, including regulation of ferry services through a public service obligation to ensure fair pricing and reliability, Support for the islanders' charter, including price transparency, service standards and investment in sustainable ferry infrastructure. Integration of ferry oversight into the Solent devolution deal, with the potential for public ownership of ferry services. The motion builds on Labour's national commitment to devolving power and improving transport infrastructure, drawing comparisons with successful public transport models in Manchester and South Yorkshire. The Isle of Wight was represented by delegates from Isle of Wight East and West, local Unison delegates and Isle of Wight West MP Richard Quigley. Richard Quigley said, "There really isn't a day that goes by in Westminster without me bringing up the very serious issues we have with cross-Solent transport. It's a huge barrier to opportunity, so it's great that our CLP motion was not just heard but supported by colleagues around the Solent and the entire South East region. Well done, Jenny and Island Labour." The call for reform comes amid growing frustration from residents and businesses over high fares, unreliable service and a lack of competition. Labour South East is now urging the government to act swiftly to bring ferry services in line with public interest and regional economic needs.
Article from the Isle of Wight Radio, read by Howard, is concerned with the appointment of a coordinator to support vulnerable communities. The Isle of Wight Council has received vital funding to help communities affected by landslides and coastal erosion. This money will be used to recruit a landslide and coastal loss community coordinator for 2 years. The coordinator will work on the southern and southwestern coasts of the island, which are facing serious erosion and landslide problems. These areas are being hit hard by strong waves and heavy rain, causing damage to homes, road closures, and a drop in business activity. The funding was secured following a successful bid by council officers to the Southern Regional Flood and Coastal Committee, that's the SRFCC, via the Flood and Coastal Risk Management FCERM7 funding route. Councillor Paul Fuller, Cabinet Member for Planning, Coastal Protection and Flooding, said, "Our coast is always changing and the threat to human life is very real. This new role is crucial to help our communities understand the risks and take steps to protect themselves and their properties. We are committed to building a resilient future for the Isle of Wight, and this specialist will play a key part in that mission. Their work will ensure that our coastal communities are better prepared and more resilient in the face of these ongoing threats. The new coordinator will be part of the Council's Climate, Coast and Environment team. Their role will be to support residents affected by frequent geological events on the island and provide advice and support to council departments, councillors, outside agencies, developers and the public on coastal erosion and landslide issues. They will also research and develop opportunities to minimize the impact of erosion and landslides and design future strategies for managing these problems. Natasha Dick, Service Director for Waste, Environment and Planning, added, "Decaying defences and outdated policies are causing significant problems worsened by climate change. This funding is crucial for providing the necessary resources to support homeowners and businesses. The new coordinator will research and share findings with the SRFCC focusing on benefits like regeneration, poverty reduction, mental health support, and emergency services. They will also collaborate with other councils facing similar issues to find the best solutions. This teamwork is essential for helping coastal communities adapt to the challenges of erosion and landslides, ensuring a more resilient future for the Isle of Wight.
Good morning, everyone. I'm John.
And I'm Mary.
We now have news items and sport. Handover of HMS Hurricane Belle. The historic Belle from World War II destroyer HMS Hurricane was formally presented by its owner, Blake Sims of Cowes, to the Royal Ocean Racing Club, RORC, in a moving ceremony on Wednesday. Mr. Sims was the son of the first captain of the H-class destroyer, Commander Hugh Crofton Sims, who left the ship in June 1941 after she was bombed in the Gladstone dock in Liverpool in May during the Blitz. The ship had been launched the previous year by his wife, Joan Frances Sims. The Belle was handed over and gratefully received by Andrew Zeng, the Rear Commodore of the RORC, and was followed by a dinner at the Cowes Clubhouse. The Belle was also blessed during a touching church service as part of the transfer by former Royal Naval Chaplain Reverend Ralph Barber. Mr. Sims gave a speech outlining the history of HMS Hurricane, her repairs after her 1941 sinking, and details of her famous Atlantic rescues, which included picking up the survivors of City of Benares, a small passenger ship evacuating 90 children from the UK to Canada. Hurricane was scuttled on Christmas Day 1943 after she was torpedoed and lost 30 feet of her stern. The evening ended with the RNLI Yarmouth lifeboat crew being awarded a Hurricane Trophy for their rescue services. Mr. Sims is the president of the HMS Hurricane Association.
Passengers face fewer ferry times. Ferry firm Red Funnel is warning of temporary changes to its timetable as one of its vessels undergoes maintenance works. The cross-Solent operator's Red Osprey needs a major service on her engine and her voith unit needs replacing. The works are scheduled ahead of the busy summer season to minimise disruption. Red Osprey will re-enter service as planned on March the 27th to ensure a full vehicle ferry fleet remains in operation throughout the busy Easter period. The vessel will then undergo the balance of her maintenance works between April the 22nd and May the 19th. During this time, Red Funnel sailings will be reduced with ferries departing every 90 minutes. While Red Osprey undergoes maintenance, the firm says it will add extra crossings for its freight ferry, Red Kestrel, to help free deck space on Red Funnel's vehicle ferries.
Crime writers for Library Evening of Literary Intrigue. The typically quiet Lord Louis Library is preparing for a night of suspense in March. On Tuesday, March 11th, the library will host 3 well-known Isle of Wight crime writers for an evening of literary intrigue. The event, named Plotting a Murder, will see authors Anna Britton, Mary Grand and Sue Shepherd delve into the secrets of their popular novels. Mary Grand is set to discuss her successful whodunit tales like A Seaside Murder and A Christmas Murder, which are known for their clever plots set on the Isle of Wight. Anna Britton, recognised for her Detective Martin and Stern series, will share how she constructs her stories. Her debut, Shot in the Dark, has already gained a following. Sue Shepherd, praised for her Sandlin PI series, will reveal her process for creating suspenseful narratives. Councillor Julie Jones-Evans said, This is a wonderful opportunity for our community to engage with talented local authors and gain a deeper appreciation for the art of crime writing. The event will start at 7 p.m, with tickets available for £3 each from the library. Medina Bookshop will be present to sell the author's novels, and refreshments will be provided by the Friends of Lord Louis Library.
Not all Isle of Wight elections have been cancelled. Island residents can mark Thursday, May the 1st on their calendars, as elections will be taking place. Town, parish and community council elections were already scheduled, and a by-election for the vacant central rural seat on the Isle of Wight Council is also likely to be held on the same day. The Central Rural Electoral Division, which includes Godshill, Arreton, Rookley and Chillerton, will be electing a new representative to choose a successor to Susie Ellis, who resigned her seat at the end of last year. While these elections are proceeding, the Isle of Wight Council's all-out elections, originally scheduled for May, have been postponed to 2026 due to the government's devolution plans. A number of Isle of Wight councillors have complained about the elections being postponed. They still have time to resign and stand for re-election on May the 1st. To take part in these elections, residents must be registered to vote. Those who have recently moved should ensure their registration is updated by Friday, April the 11th. For those unable to attend polling stations in person, applications for postal votes must be submitted by 5 p.m. on Monday, April the 14th. Photographic ID will be required, such as a passport or driving licence. Those without can apply for a free voter authority certificate by Wednesday, April the 23rd. Anybody interested in standing for town or parish council can ask for a nomination pack from Isle of Wight Council Electoral Services. Completed forms must be submitted by Wednesday, April the 2nd at 4 p.m. Further information on registering to vote, applying for postal votes or obtaining voter ID can be found on the Isle of Wight Council's website.
Could the island make it a hat-trick? The Isle of Wight has been shortlisted as finalist in the Group Leisure and Travel Awards, which could see our much-loved holiday destination crowned top for the third year in a row. The nomination has been made by readers of Group Leisure and Travel magazine, and the island is now in the running to be voted winner as the best UK destination. Readers of the magazine will now vote for their favourite destination, which sees the island up against other top UK locations, including County Durham, London, Wiltshire and Liverpool. Amy Summers, Head of Marketing and Sustainability at Visit Isle of Wight, said, "To be shortlisted once again in the GLT Awards is an incredible honour. It just goes to show how fantastic the tourism offer is here on our island, and how hard local businesses work to provide reasons to visit time and again. Coach and group travel is a vital part of our visitor numbers, especially through the winter months, and this award highlights the importance the sector contributes to our island economy. Other businesses with strong island links are also represented in the well-known Group Travel Awards. Dacia's Holidays are shortlisted in the Best Coach or Tour Operator, Wight Link in the Best Ferry or Fixed Link Operator, and in the Best Accommodation for Groups category, it is a three-way battle for the island between Leisureplex Holiday Hotels, Shanklin Hotel and Bayshore Hotel in Sandown, Dacia's Holidays at Shanklin, and Warner Hotels in Yarmouth and Bembridge. Voting closes at the end of April, and the winners will be announced at a ceremony in London on June 26.
D-Day veteran awarded special new war medal. A D-Day veteran has been awarded a new medal commemorating his service on the Arctic convoys in the Second World War. Alec Penstone, 99, who lives in Shanklin, received a letter from the Russian embassy this month to ask if he would like to receive the medal, commemorating the 80th anniversary of the end of the Patriotic War on May the 9th. Alex said, "I said, why not? I've got all the others. I'm so lucky, really. I have such lovely friends." Alex's grandson replied to the embassy, and he will receive the medal to add to his Royal Navy tunic. May the 9th, 1945, marks Victory in Europe Day, when Germany surrendered its military forces to the Allies. Alec is the last remaining D-Day veteran on the Isle of Wight, serving in the Arctic convoys and the Far East, including the liberation of Hong Kong in August 1945. He served on submarines and the HMS Campania, which was instrumental in the D-Day landings and the Arctic convoys. Serving as a submarine detector, Alex swept the English Channel for U-boats attacking the invasion. Alec is a decorated veteran, awarded his first medal at 15 years old as an air raid precautions messenger. More recently, he has been awarded a special medal as a poppy seller for 84 years. He married his wife Gladys in 1944 and was sent immediately out to the Far East, returning 14 months later. The couple remained married for 77 years, with a child, 2 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. Gladys died in 2022, aged 95. Later in life, he became an electrician and spent his spare time creating dolls' houses, raising thousands of pounds for charities. Alex spends his time just living and goes dancing every other Wednesday. "All the ladies pull me up for a waltz," he said. Alec is due to celebrate his 100th birthday in April on St George's Day.
Former MP opts for parish council role by Oliver Dyer. Former MP for the Isle of Wight, Bob Seeley, has become a parish councillor. Mr Seeley, who was the island's MP between 2017 and 2024, is one of 2 new parish councillors for Freshwater. A spokesperson for Freshwater Parish Council said, "We are pleased to report that we have a full quota of 14 councillors, with the recent co-option of Sandra Knowles and Bob Seeley." Mr Seeley said, "I'm always going to do my best for the island. The island is my passion and always will be." A couple of parish councillors asked me if I would like to serve on the parish council, given there was a vacancy, and I agreed. I don't want to do elected politics for the moment, but I'm always keen to do my best for the island in whatever capacity. Freshwater is a vibrant community, and it's very important to the wider West Wight. My aims are to work with others for the good of the community. I'm happy to help for as long as I'm needed or as long as I can. Conservative Mr Seeley was the last sole MP for the Isle of Wight, before the island was split into 2 constituencies. He stood for the Isle of Wight West seat in last year's general election, losing out to Labour and current West MP Richard Quigley. Before becoming an MP, Mr Seeley served as an Isle of Wight councillor, representing the Central Wight ward. Meanwhile, well-known businesswoman and former managing director of Hillbands Pest Control, Sandra Knowles, is a director of the Isle of Wight Chamber of Commerce and the current MD of JR Zone. Miss Knowles and Mr Seeley replace former parish councillors Jill Kennett and Carol Bray, who recently resigned.
Inflatable sobering message. Isle of Wight residents are being invited to walk through a huge inflatable bowl to raise awareness for cancer next week. The bowl, measuring 9 feet by 7 feet, will stop off at Asda on St George's Way, Newport, on Tuesday, March the 11th and Wednesday, March the 12th, before making its way to Lake on Thursday, March the 13th. The inflatable bowl will take visitors through various stages of bowel cancer and raise awareness for the importance of screening and good bowel health. Genevieve Edwards, Chief Executive at Bowel Cancer UK, said, "We're excited to kick off our 2025 UK Roadshow tour on the Isle of Wight, starting important conversations about bowel cancer. Our mission is to raise awareness about the symptoms, encourage people to contact their GP if they notice any signs, and highlight the importance of bowel cancer screening for those who are eligible. We're hoping our giant inflatable bowl will be a fun and engaging way to break the ice and start life-saving conversations, so come and visit us at the first stop of our UK tour."
2 primary schools are delighted and pleased to be part of a government pilot to give all children free breakfasts. Barton Primary School and Gatton and Lake Primary School have been selected as early adopters to trial the government's new flagship scheme, expected to run from April to July before a national rollout. Some 750 state schools are expected to offer a free breakfast to all pupils and at least 30 minutes of childcare before school. The £7 million pilot was announced at Labour's party conference last September. Mark Snow, head teacher of Barton Primary School, said, "We already provide a 30-minute free breakfast club to any children that choose or need to attend. We have been providing this service for some time, but are having to find funds to support our families with this service. We are really pleased to be part of the early adopter schools nationally, and this will enable us to maintain and enhance our current provision." A spokesperson for Gatton and Lake Primary School said, "The plan going forward will enhance our offer and make it sustainable and provide an essential service to those families that need it."
Politicians weigh in behind ferry demands. Both Isle of Wight MPs and the leader of the Isle of Wight Council have put their weight behind the Islanders' Charter to address long-standing issues with cross-Solent travel. But what exactly is it? The Charter is a collaboration between Isle of Wight Council leader Phil Jordan, Isle of Wight West MP Richard Quigley and Isle of Wight East MP Joe Robertson, outlining key principles aimed at improving ferry services. It aims to send a signal that the status quo can no longer be an option, with a wish list for changes to the island's ferry company's operations. In the latest update, Mr Robertson said there is an open door for the ferry companies to engage with the Charter, and Mr Quigley said the issue transcends party politics. Councillor Jordan also called into question the role of the Council's Transport Infrastructure Board, TIB, set up by the Council in 2017. Councillor Jordan said, "Some concerning information surrounding the TIB's structure and role has recently come to light. I am currently discussing its future with the island's 2 MPs. The Charter has received unanimous support across the Isle of Wight Council, but neither Red Funnel nor Wightlink have been approached to engage with it." Wightlink CEO Katie Taylor said, "While the authors of the Charter have yet to get in touch to discuss it, we always welcome discussions to support the island. We look forward to discussing cross-Solent ferries at the round table meeting with the Maritime Minister, Department for Transport, MPs, councillors and other stakeholders later this year. Red Funnel CEO Fran Collins said she was disappointed that Red Funnel was neither consulted with nor engaged with. She added, "We are committed to continuing to support the Isle of Wight for the future and remain open to discussing the Charter." Mr. Robertson said, "It is not a list of unreasonable demands, but a set of basic principles that would better serve island residents and, importantly, would provide a stronger chance of success for any potential owner of Red Funnel." Mr. Quigley said, "The TIB is clearly not doing what it is supposed to do. That must include holding ferry and other transport operators to account for continued failure. Something has to change."
Visit the Isle of Wight Observer office to meet a mobile guardian. If you're wondering how you, a loved one, or even a client would cope following a fall or needed urgent support at home or elsewhere, then you're invited to a special event in the heart of Newport next Friday. Guardian Mobile will be showcasing its latest innovative and affordable telecare devices at the Isle of Wight Observer offices. The event will provide visitors with a unique opportunity to see, touch and test the technology that could enable somebody to live more independently or remain living at home instead of supported accommodation. The devices on display are not just practical, but tailored to ensure that help is within reach at all times. Sandra, an expert from Guardian Mobile, will be on hand to personally guide visitors through the range of telecare products on offer, answering questions and walking them through how the solutions can bring peace of mind for individuals, families and carers. The demonstration will include 2 mobile phones, a smartphone and a flip model, both designed with simplicity and ease of use in mind, alongside a big button desk phone for those who prefer the familiarity of a landline style. For those who want options beyond a telephone, Sandra will also have Guardian Mobile's Emergency Home Hub on display. This device provides 24/7 support with the simple press of a button. There will also be a personal alarm, a lightweight wearable solution for emergency assistance and fall detection. These devices are practical, comfortable and perfect for those looking to retain independence while always having a lifeline for emergencies. Whether you are seeking a solution for your personal needs or for somebody else, this event offers a pressure-free environment to explore the options and see how Guardian Mobile's technology can help you or those you care for. Just drop in, no appointment necessary. Isle of Wight East MP Joe Robertson, who before becoming an MP worked for Dementia UK, is also expected to attend the event. For additional information, visit iw.observer/guardian-mobile or call 0800 233 5288. The Isle of Wight Observer is hosting this showcase as a free service for readers who may be interested in finding out more about these products. We will not receive any payment in respect of the event.
New mental health centre opening. A new Isle of Wight NHS mental health and community care facility will open next week, with therapy and treatment rooms and confidential spaces on Newport High Street. The Newport Health and Wellbeing Centre is due to open on Monday, March the 10th at 62 High Street, the former HMV shop. The £6.7 million new facility will bring together both physical and mental health services, with 11 therapy and treatment rooms, confidential spaces to manage new referrals, and private areas for remote consultations. The centre also houses a cafe in its open plan layout. The project has been in development for over 2 years, with plans first unveiled in the summer of 2022. The project was slated for completion in spring 2024, but hit a roadblock due to a noise issue from the builder's external engineering services, which has since been resolved. Community nurses, physical therapists, community mental health teams and psychological therapists will all use the facilities, encouraging collaboration and engagement with the community. Joe Smythe, Chief Officer, Isle of Wight NHS Trust, said, "We are proud of the role we played in securing the funding and building for this fantastic facility. It is wonderful to see the new centre finally open, and we look forward to continuing to work closely with our colleagues at Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust for the benefit of our island community." Ellen Newnham, Interim Assistant Operations Manager, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust, said, "The improvement that the new centre will make for both staff and the patients we care for will be incredible. The centre is newly refurbished and designed to be accessible and inviting. It also increases our capacity to offer more space and improve community support in a comfortable, welcoming environment for all."
Cycling team brave the mud. Wight Link cycle race team members Charis Jones and Alfie Hayden competed on the mainland last weekend. On Saturday, Charis took part in the Royal Navy Cup Women's National B race in Lytton, Somerset. She faced some of the top riders in the South region and finished strongly in the fast-paced 35-mile race. Charis said, "After being involved in a crash in my first race of the season last week, I was concentrating on finishing. I felt really strong today and am looking forward to my next race in a couple of weeks." On Sunday, Alfie travelled to Newnham Park near Plymouth for the first round of the South West MTB Series. He was the first junior to finish. Alfie said it was the muddiest race of the year so far, but was sunny and a great course to race on. The team expressed their gratitude to sponsors Wight Link Isle of Wight Ferries, Island Renewables, White Mountain, Creative Studios and Rapanui for their continued support.
Shanklin Chime named UK's best hidden gem. The Isle of Wight's 10,000-year-old gorge, Shanklin Chine, has been crowned the UK's top outdoor hidden gem. Known for its natural beauty and rich history, the picturesque spot outshone dozens of contenders for those searching online for lesser-known scenic retreats. The Chine's greenery, cascading waterfalls and peaceful pathways enchant visitors, with 1,001 positive reviews lending to its popularity. But beyond its natural splendours, Shanklin Chine holds historical significance as a World War II location for the Pluto Pipeline Under the Ocean initiative. The award couldn't delight its long-term owner Anne Springman more. Excuse me. Now 93, she has passed the responsibilities of the attraction to a charitable trust after managing it for over 40 years. She singled out married couple Joe and Matt Porter for their tireless work in running the Chine, often working 7 days a week. "We're all thrilled with this recognition, but it's really down to Joe and Matt," she said. "Visitors love the peace, history and even the dinosaurs. I've given them names," she confided. "Jock, who's a Royal Marine, Adrian, he's a bit slinky, and Jeff, who I think looks slightly cross. but they are frightfully grand and children love them. I know they're boys and they've got eggs, but that's what I think about them. Anne fondly recalled explaining the dinosaur's age to a young visitor. I told her they're just a little older than me, and she believed it. In recent years, the team has faced more than 35 landslides and plenty of floods. You can't fight nature, Anne explained. The chine has changed over the centuries, but in the end it just gets more beautiful. The new accolade comes as the team gears up to celebrate the 80th anniversary of VE Day in May.
Quakers Oaks. To commemorate the 400th anniversary of the birth of their founder, George Fox, Isle of Wight Quakers have planted 2 oak trees in Church Lytton in Newport. These are to replace 2 oaks that were cut down some years ago. The planting took place on Wednesday, February 26, in early afternoon sunshine after a wet morning. As well as local Quakers, the occasion was attended by the island's Lord Lieutenant, Susie Sheldon, and the High Sheriff, Graham Biss. Helping with the planting were Isle of Wight Council tree officers Tony Gillingham and Dave Callagher. Local resident and Quaker Jane Edmonds spoke of her memories of the 2 previous oak trees and described how the former cemetery transformed into the park and play area it now is. The Isle of Wight Quakers meet in the Rope Store at Key Arts on Sundays from 10:45 until 11:45, followed by tea, coffee and biscuits. A half-hour meeting is held on Wednesday at 12:30. Visitors are welcome. Phone 759-024 for further information or go to iw.observer/iw-Quakers.
Breaking through a pain barrier for good causes. A Newport man has run more than 3 miles a day for 145 consecutive days to raise money for charity. Businessman Martin Thorpe was hoping to continue for another 55 days, but had to give up last week after struggling with injury. Martin, 39, started his running marathon on October the 1st and said, "I started to feel pain in my calf after about 100 days, but I kept on going mentally, battling through the injury. I started to slow down my running so I could cope, but it just started to get harder. I had previously had this sort of pain when I was training for a marathon, and it took me a year to finally recover. So in the end, I decided to call it a day. But to complete 145 days, up against sorts of weather and some unexpected storms, has been amazing. I'm running for 2 charities, Mindset Bros, who raise men's mental health awareness, and Daisy Chain. The mental health aspect has been a driving force. I have had some amazing responses from guys who have had their own problems and because of my efforts have started running or doing some exercise themselves. That's what has helped to make it so worthwhile. So far, Martin has raised around £600 from his efforts. To contribute to his charities, visit iw.observer/martin.thorpe.
Days gone by. 125 years ago in March 1900. The age for the sale of intoxicating liquor to children was raised to 15. A small dairyman in Chale was charged with having no nameplate on the side of his cart. In his defence, the dairyman, Charles Butcher, said that he had just had the cart painted and had forgotten to reattach the plate. He got away with just a caution.
100 years ago in March 1925, an inquest held at Golden Hill Fort in Freshwater found conclusively that the steamer that had gone down in the Needles Channel on the night of February the 23rd was the Castlereagh from Belfast, but the cause of the tragedy remained a mystery, as there were no survivors from the crew of 10. There was some opposition to an application by chemist Messrs. Timothy Wight of High Street, Newport, to sell medicated wines. Opponents were concerned that it would be an excuse to become a wine shop, but the chemist gave a guarantee that no medicated wines would be sold without a prescription.
5 years ago, in March 1950, the Ireland County Council appealed against the decision of the licensing authority to allow Southern Vectis to run double-decker buses along Undercliff Road. The council feared that alterations to accommodate the buses would not stop at lopping back trees, and that the road would end up being changed out of all recognition. Children were warned to take great care when picking primroses, bluebells, and other wildflowers, as there was a glut of adders.
In March 1975, Ireland horticultural producers were angry about the refusal of the government to continue the subsidy on heating fuel for glasshouses. The county surveyor appealed to islanders to help halt illegal rubbish dumping in the countryside. The appeal followed a prolonged spate of fly tipping at the entrance to closed tips awaiting land reinstatement at roadsides and on private land.
Quirky Landmark Followed the Sun by David Wight. Many years ago, an unusual building existed along Forest Road at Parkhurst. Situated along with its more conventionally designed neighbours stood what local children called the Roundhouse, constructed of wood. This unusual building was designed and built by J.S. White's, the boat builders. This was perhaps what one might say would have been the forerunner of what today we call diverse company investment. The idea being that the house, being circular, would have been situated on a form of turntable, whereupon, by turning a winding mechanism, the building could be rotated to catch the sun during various times of day. An ingenious idea that perhaps never caught the public's imagination. After many years of use, it was eventually demolished, as one of the last photographs taken shows. One of the island's main vehicle dealers had been Frank Cheverton Motors, specialising in new car sales of Fords and Austins, also vehicle repairs and mechanical refurbishments. Many humorous stories abound regarding the then Mr. Cheverton. Two of them are as follows. Mr. Cheverton would never allow smoking, whereupon, seeing his manager talking to what looked like another employee of the garage, Mr. Cheverton briskly walked up to the man, immediately dismissing him and informing him to leave the garage at once. Following this, his sales manager turned to his boss and said, "Unfortunately, Mr. Cheverton, you have just sacked and dismissed a customer who was negotiating buying a car." The second story involves him catching one of his mechanics smoking on the premises. He immediately sacked the man, telling him, "It's a good job for you that I have never caught you smoking in the past." The cheeky mechanic replied, "You have, Mr. Cheverton, and that was when you sacked me the first time." The future of Cheverton's and its long history of Ford dealership was fortunately preserved and is still trading today under the ownership of Premier Motors. Another leading garage on the island was Canning Day, the Vauxhall dealership. Day's was originally situated on the site now occupied by Morrison's supermarket, eventually moving premises to a new spot in South Street. A short distance from Canning Day was the fire station, which is still at the same location. Yet another leading Newport garage was Fowler's, with a sales room frontage situated on the High Street. They were the island's British Leyland dealer.
A look back in time. Isle of Wight Observer. This gem, published in the Isle of Wight Observer on 9th of March 1907, caught our eye this week. Ventnorians were at loggerheads over an important issue, with the contentious matter settled by a very local referendum. This was won by a narrow majority by the anti-steamboaters, clearly unimpressed with evidence submitted by the elected representatives of Blackpool, Brighton or Southend. It is interesting to note that Ventnor had two newspapers at the time. Sunday steamboats at Ventnor. The controversy respecting the Sunday steamboats at Ventnor has been settled for a time, a poll of the town having shown that a small majority of the inhabitants are opposed to Sunday steamboats. The vexed question has had one good effect. It has relieved the town of a certain amount of monotony and has given the people something to occupy themselves with. Sunday steamboats may seem a very small matter to most people, but Ventnor regarded it as very important, and it has proved of sufficient interest to divide the town into two parties: the steamboaters, who have vigorously championed the cause of the steamboat companies, and the anti-steamboaters, who have as strenuously worked to prevent the boats visiting the town on the Sabbath. Mr. Leach was the champion of the former body and Mr. Barfoot of the latter, and neither could have worked harder had the matter been one of national importance. During the week, posters were issued bearing the words, "Hastings Sunday Boats Disaster, a warning to Ventnor." These were the result of a visit by supporters of Mr. Barfoot to Hastings, where the Sunday steamboats are supposed to have been detrimental to the town. Mr. Leach's reply to this was the special issue of a local paper containing a whole page of facts for the workers, in large type comparing the progress of Blackpool, Brighton, Southend, etc., with that of Ventnor, with telegrams from the mayors of those places affirming that the progress of those places had not been retarded by Sunday steamboats. Both Ventnor papers also went to press earlier than usual to catch the electors with fresh facts, one championing the cause of Mr. Barfoot and the other of Mr. Leach. The result of the poll was declared at 140 in the presence of a large crowd outside the town hall as follows: Barfoot 466, Leach 439, majority 27.
My View by Holmesy. Yearning for an old banger. Good businesses make life easy for their customers. Unfortunately, like everything else in life now, buying and servicing cars is hopelessly complicated. I just took mine for a service on the mainland. There's no island-based dealership anymore. The huge jazzily lit showroom in Basingstoke must have cost millions and was staffed by pretty young women. Bizarrely, all seemed dressed for a night out. Their uniform included heels and heavy makeup. I'm no fashion or beauty expert, but I'd swear they'd all had work done, mostly lip fillers. At my age, I don't look at women as I once did, and those under 50 certainly don't notice me. So, here's the thing. When did looking like a rejected Love Island contestant become a thing in the workplace? Garages used to be oily places with rags, ramps, overalls and pits. Car sales sites were flat, open spaces, festooned with bunting. If you looked around their inventory, a cheesy man in a sheepskin jacket would appear to coo over the car you were admiring. He'd describe its features, advantages and benefits. Soon he'd offer a test drive or demonstration without checking your license. While fixing the trade plates, he'd establish where you worked and if you had any part exchange. He'd verify the mileage and how many owners yours had before you'd bought it. Was it serviced regularly? Is the record book in the glove box? Inevitably, they're all online now. Paper is so last century. After 15 minutes of gentle probing and a short drive, you'd be in a warm porter-cabin office, silently waiting as he thumbed a well-used glasses trade guide. Eventually, he'd emit a huge sigh and offer you half the amount you hoped your car was worth. If only you'd bought the one with the bigger engine, he'd say knowledgeably.
There was further disappointment when he examined your old banger. That cracked wind mirror you'd meant to replace, the scratch on the bumper, and the accumulated dings and dents would be pointed out in detail. He'd note that your well-worn tyres were 4 different brands. He'd have to rectify all these defects before selling it on. The final hammer blow came when he said, "The trouble is, no one wants those anymore." Crestfallen, you'd reluctantly agreed that he was indeed doing you a favour, taking it off your hands for a little more than scrap value. You'd shake on it and pay a deposit, always in cash, of course. Despite serious buyer's remorse, days later, you'd pick the car up and show it off to your mates. I miss those halcyon days. None of the wannabe models working in that jazzily lit Basingstoke dealership bothered approaching me. They were too engrossed in their iPhones. Maintaining vehicles now requires booking months in advance, and there's never a loan car. Main agent service is often awful and always at extortionate prices. This time I had a £300 oil change, plus the ferry, obviously. Whenever I book the service date, they demand to know what time I'll arrive. I've been early twice now, and each time they've made me wait until my allotted time slot. They did wash my car this time, but presumably used water from a nearby puddle. The interior set me wondering if the technician had just enjoyed "bring your wet dog to work day" while replacing my oil. Car electrics are reminiscent of 70s Longbridge now, despite new car asking prices being utterly audacious. My latest experience convinced me that my next car will be an old one. I'm done with main dealerships, heavy depreciation and technology. I don't want to be beat at any more either. I certainly don't want regular software updates, dodgy electrics, or a radio that takes longer to warm up than our 60s TV. I want simplicity.
On Saturday, 15th of March, the Isle of Wight Symphony Orchestra is in concert at Medina Theatre. Starting at 7:15 p.m, tickets cost £15. It's an exciting concert of orchestral music featuring guest violin soloist Mathilde Mildwiski. For more information, telephone Medina Theatre on 01983 823 884. On Tuesday, 18th of March, the diabetes group Isle of Wight Drop-In meet at 2:30 p.m. This is a support session for people living with diabetes and is at the Utilia Energy Hub Shop, 121 High Street, Newport. For more information, you can telephone 0741 53 99102.
Shanklin Theatre, Friday the 7th and Saturday the 8th of March at 7:30. Matinee Saturday 8th at 2 p.m. and this is for The Wind in the Willows by Alan Bennett, 868000, or book online at www.shanklintheatre.com.
Forthcoming attraction, music legends on a star-studded lineup at Ireland's Jazz Weekend by Zach Saunders. The popular Isle of Wight Jazz Weekend has announced its exciting lineup for its 2025 edition, set to take place between September 25th to 28th. This year's festival, a week later than usual, promises a blend of jazz greats and emerging talents. Topping the bill is Claire Teal, one of the UK's most esteemed jazz vocalists, known for her work with BBC Radio 2 and Jazz FM. Teal and her quintet will close the festival with a performance at Newport Minster, ensuring a grand finale. Saxophonist Derek Nash, renowned for his long-standing association with Jules Holland, makes a welcome return. In addition to performing with his band Sax Appeal at Newport Minster, Nash will lead a saxophone workshop and make guest appearances throughout the festival. Another festival highlight is legendary drummer and band leader Clark Tracy, who will bring his Jazz Champions ensemble to the island for the first time. Featuring Art Thiemann, Dave Newton and Simon Allen, this group promises a remarkable performance. The festival opens on Thursday, September 25th, with the Island Band Mixed Messages at Mountbatten Hospice. Friday's schedule features James Allsop's Stan Getz Tribute Quartet and a solo set by festival favourite Leanne Carroll. That evening, Newport's Key Arts will host dual performances: Latin Jazz with Derek Nash downstairs and Gypsy Jazz with Fidelio Hot Club upstairs. On Saturday, rising star Imi Churchill will take to the stage, while Amy Roberts will perform with the Unity Stompers. The day will culminate in performances by Jazz Champions and Sax Appeal. The festival concludes on the Sunday with a tribute to jazz legend Oscar Peterson by pianist Craig Milverton and a return performance by the acclaimed Nigel Price Organ Trio. Claire Teal's closing set will be a fitting finale to this 4-day celebration of jazz. Supported by the Isle of Wight County Press and Red Funnel, the festival attracts jazz enthusiasts from across the UK. Sponsorship and advertising opportunities are available, and further announcements, including fringe events, will follow.
Orchestra plays Whitney. The Symphonics Orchestra is set to bring a Whitney Houston tribute to Shanklin Theatre. The concert, titled Symphonics Whitney, will take place in May. It will feature the Symphonics Orchestra, the $1 Million Band and Keisha Chun as Whitney Houston. The event will showcase some of Whitney's iconic songs, along with a few surprise arrangements. As the first show of its kind in the UK, Symphonics Whitney is set to entertain audiences with Whitney Houston's timeless hits. Tickets are now available at shanklintheatre.com.
Readers' letters. Voices ignored from a very angry Wroxall parent. Make sure your voice is heard, proclaimed the Isle of Wight Council on its Facebook page shortly before the second consultation on the School Place Planning Report closed early in February, urging responses from the public. 3 short weeks later, thousands upon thousands of consultations were supposedly analysed, and 5 separate, and yet virtually identical, reports were released on each of the schools: Oakfield, Wroxall, Arraton, Brading and Cowes, all still recommending closure. This is in spite of, in Wroxall's case, over 700 consultation responses, showing over 86% of all respondents disagreed with the proposal. They acknowledged each and every one of our concerns, then basically concluded, we're going to do it anyway. With the fast-track devolution process and subsequent cancellation of May's council elections, Ireland residents are already feeling that their democratic rights have been stripped away.
Don't Lump Us with Hampshire by P. Stannard of Newport. Dear Editor, the proposed amalgamation of the island, Hampshire, Southampton and Portsmouth councils into one is something we should all oppose. We would inevitably be the poor relation, merely an outpost, with our unique geographical location and comparatively small population. Our council is already a unitary authority, as are those of the two cities, and we should be more self-reliant. We do not need a regional authority, with or without a mayor. If anything, we already have too much bureaucracy, with parish and town councils as well as the Isle of Wight Council. We are a special case and cannot be treated in the same way as the mainland. The island is already underfunded, has lost medical services to QA in Portsmouth, is held hostage by the ferry operators, and offers no real opportunity to school leavers. Big-name employers are leaving us. We have too few people to support the burgeoning number of elderly residents, and lumping us in with the rest of Hampshire won't solve any of these problems. Looking at the track record of this government, if they say something is for our benefit, it probably isn't. Rachel from Accounts can't remember what her jobs were. Keir Starmer is more interested in defending Ukraine than our own borders, and is constantly trying to cosy up to the EU leaders that despise us. And our own Richard Quigley voted in favour of the family farm tax and scrapping winter fuel payments. If Labour genuinely believes in democracy, they should allow a referendum on this matter. Although the last time a British government did that, they didn't like the outcome, and the establishment have been bleating about it ever since.
Dangers of Devolution from Patricia Armand Whitwell. Dear Editor, I want to explain to the Isle of Wight Council why devolution of our council would be a disaster. It is just Labour trickery to deny us the May elections, as they know Reform is getting its candidates ready to have an influence on the Isle of Wight Council. A directly elected mayor would be unknown to islanders, and the Labour urban areas of Portsmouth and Southampton would overrule any of our representatives. That's if Angela Rayner allowed us any representation. How could we attend council meetings? It would be a dilution of democracy and the distancing of power from the people who live in rural areas if the local councils are closed. There would also not be a localised approach to decision-making, not for Isle of Wight Council taxpayers anyway. It's also a discrimination against older people who do not have computers and could log in to see things online. Another Labour trickery, as the older people would mostly be voting Conservative or Reform, anything but Labour. Richard Quigley MP and Labour would support the change, of course they would. Decisions would not be made close to our rural homes. I can only say that devolution suits Labour councils. When the Red Brigade is finally voted out, it will be too late to change things back. That is why they are in such a hurry.
Tidal Pool by Dr. Guy Moore from Lake. I wonder if the Environment Agency, in announcing coastal refurbishments with considerable economic benefits, County Press 14th of February 25, might consider incorporating a tidal swimming pool or some tidal paddling pools in the Sandown Bay area. Such pools could provide safer bathing areas of warmer seawater close to the revetment, easy to supervise, and especially attractive during low tides when the sea can be a long way away.
Bad choice from Peter George of Brading. I write with regard to the Isle of Wight recycling water project. I feel that it is a bad choice to site one of the new buildings in Alverstone, which I believe is part of the Brading Marsh floodplain and requires draining by the opening of the floodgates at Bembridge. This happens after heavy rainfall and the subsequent surplus water coming off the downs and down through the valley. The draining of surplus water through Bembridge prevents the flooding of properties in Brading and further up the valley. This also helps to keep the main road through Morton Common free from flooding, which causes road closure. I cannot imagine Southern Water treating and purifying wastewater only to dispose of it through the reject water release when the River Yar water level is high, which, with our increase of rainfall, is happening more often. Who is paying for all this? No doubt the island residents. I would also like to mention the problem with the awful smell in the summer from the existing sewer works. This will undoubtedly become worse with the extension of the treatment works. The smell must be off-putting to holidaymakers coming to Sandown for our lovely sandy beaches and must surely impact on the loss of business for our hotels and guest houses. Sandown is becoming a ghost town with the closure of the shops, the hotels and the guest houses. I imagine that many residents and businesses feel as I do and do not want the new recycling water centre proposed by Southern Water.
New ports needed to improve ferries by David May from Sandown. Dear Editor, as seen in last week's edition, it is very clear that your paper continues to give greater coverage to a meaningless, unenforceable ferry charter rather than challenge those elected representatives as to what action they are taking to provide island infrastructure to allow for competition. This charter is just a smokescreen by the MPs and the Isle of Wight Council leader to pretend they are challenging the ferry's duopoly when in fact, by wasting their time and our money on such waffle, they are continuing to maintain the status quo. Despite your reporting that Sir David Clementi is a keen sailor, it is clear that he has no idea of the mindset of the ferry companies and how they are managed. Waffle about charters and what the elected members think is hardly a priority for the CEOs burdened with debt while trying to maintain ageing tonnage with many senior operating staff having left. I would humbly suggest that Sir David Clementi, Island Soapbox, February 20th, as a former Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, could spend his time more helpfully offering his extensive financial experience to sort out their unsustainable debt, which is so restricting their businesses, resulting in deteriorating services to the island. Remembering, of course, it was the commercial banks' irresponsible lending between 2001 and 2007 which allowed for the mass sell-off of British industry at exaggerated values that led to the financial crisis and the consequences we are all suffering today, just to make a few shareholders wealthy. Until this ferry duopoly of freight services is challenged by providing meaningful infrastructure, ports, berths, to allow other operators, the few with vested interests will remain at the expense of the majority of islanders.
So it's goodbye from John.
And goodbye from Mary.
The BBC In Touch programme follows, and the scaffolding news follows that. Information from Hampshire and Isle of Wight NHS. Thanks to the help of Dora, an artificial intelligent telephone assistant, Average waiting times for Isle of Wight complexity cataract surgery for patients in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight has reduced from 35 weeks at the beginning of January 2024 to 10 weeks or less. Dora calls patients waiting for cataract surgery, speaks to them in a natural voice and gathers medical history. Dora is also capable of offering patients a choice of treatment locations based on waiting times and distance from their home. Aris Konstantopoulos, consultant ophthalmologist at University Hospital Southampton and ophthalmology clinical lead for NHS Hampshire and Isle of Wight, said, "All hospitals in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight have made massive strides in reducing the waits for cataract surgery in the area. Dora has enabled this by allowing us to develop a single point of access for referrals, reducing the burden of administrative processes, and providing clear options to patients. Using Dora has also allowed us to free up time for our nursing teams to concentrate on more surgical work, while Dora makes the phone calls and completes the administration duty."
We have had some great feedback from patients who have said that Dora is very clear and easy to understand. She also engages and interacts with patients and can understand what they are saying and asking. Dora has made more than 1,200 calls to patients since January 2024, which has freed up many hours of nursing time who previously made the calls. Feedback from patients who were contacted by Dora include, "It was very clear and efficient and prompt, and it worked very well. Very simple and straight to the point. I had no problem understanding Dora and answered my questions." Hampshire and the Isle of Wight has a high volume of cataract surgeries with around 15,000 patients undergoing surgery each year. A Dora patient experience survey from July to December 2024 showed that 92% of patients were extremely satisfied with the experience. Ophthalmology is one of the busiest specialities in the NHS, carrying out more than 500,000 operations every year, 6% of the NHS total, and more than 7.5 million outpatient appointments.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello. Sometimes it's good to be proved wrong. Just before Christmas, we broadcast a very well-received interview with Sandy Wasmer, who we said was, to our knowledge, the only visually impaired woman CEO in the UK. Well, we've since heard from two keen-eared listeners telling us of two other women who have the top job in their organisations and who would make excellent subjects for In Touch. Well, we always try to do what you tell us, and I'm delighted to say that we've brought them together to tell their stories and hopefully compare notes. Agnes Lunny has run Positive Futures. That's an organisation representing and campaigning for people with learning disabilities since 1995. She's also chaired the Association for Real Change in Northern Ireland, which does what it says on the tin. Halima Begum has recently taken over as CEO of Oxfam GB, and before that she was head of Action Aid UK. And I think it's fair to say that before you got those top jobs, both of you had direct experience of discrimination as visually impaired people in even getting a job, or indeed having promotions blocked because of perceptions about your lack of sight. But first of all, let's meet you both properly and find out more about you. Agnes, you had a congenital eye condition which progressed during your childhood. Tell us about that and what effect it had on things like your schooling.
Yeah, well, I was diagnosed with a degenerative eye condition when I was 8. Previous to that, I had perfect vision. I was one of 4 in my family 3 older than me who'd had this diagnosis. And I think when it came to my turn, it was, oh, here goes Agnes again. She wants, someone to feel sorry for her. So I think initially my parents thought, It quickly became evident that I also had that eye condition. And I got to go to a local grammar school where I was a boarder. I have to say the experience there was excellent. When it came to my O-levels, that ages me now, doesn't it, Peter? I had to do my exam in a separate room because the paper was so very big, it was very noisy. And I did very well on my O-levels. Came back to choose my A-levels and was told by the careers teacher that it really wasn't a good idea. It would be too stressful for me because at that stage I hadn't very much vision. And what about all the other people who had full vision? They were also competing to do their A-levels. And my mum said, I'm not here to have a discussion about that. We're here to choose Agnes's A-levels. It was my first real experience of, hang on, this is not going to be very easy.
So in a way, it got tougher as you got older.
Oh, yeah. Well, then I went to university. I was interviewed for the social work course, having done a foundation year. And at the end of the interview, the person interviewing me said, Agnes, I don't think this is for you. And I said, pardon? He said, I don't think you'll make it as a social worker. How are you going to know where people live? And I said, did you ask everybody else that question? And he said, no. And I said, well, why are you asking me? If you don't want me to do social work here, I'll do it somewhere else. And I went for an interview. It felt to me like everybody in Northern Ireland was on the panel. The room was so big and echoey. The chair of the panel dropped her papers. I picked them up as a dutiful person looking for a job does, carried on with the interview. Then she dropped her pen and asked me whether to pick it up. So I did pick it up and I returned it to her in a way that she wasn't expecting and said to her that I thought I was coming for a job interview, but obviously it was an eye test. So I just got up and left the interview. But I eventually got a job. I worked in the only secure unit in Northern Ireland for young offenders. And I was working in that job very well, very much enjoyed it. It was very, very challenging, very difficult. I witnessed all sorts of things. Part of my role was as a qualified social worker ensuring that the children in my care understood their rights. And part of that was their right to be safe and to be safeguarded. And I was encouraging them to speak to their solicitors about some of the practices. I was trundling on as normal and I was waiting to be told what court to attend the next day. But rather than be told that, I was told to come to the director's office where I was told I was being dismissed because I was a risk to myself and to other people. And I discovered that the school had written to my ophthalmologist asking if I was in a room with 25 young boys and they were passing a knife behind their back, would I see it? And he said no, but he said, I don't think anybody would see it. And on that basis, I was terminated, ill health grounds.
So this was a way of getting rid of you. You were trouble,
yeah.
But they used your sight.
Yeah, but the good thing about it, Peter, is I got to go to my own funeral because I've never been surrounded by so many flowers and people arriving at my door, not able to speak. So I imagine it was kind of close to an Irish wake. So well, there's always good things.
Let's just leave you there for a moment, Agnes, because Halima, tell us a bit of your backstory, because I believe that your father had to campaign on your behalf even before you were out of your pram.
Hi, Peter. Yeah, that's correct. My story starts in Bangladesh, where I was born. I basically had an infection in my eye. It was a waterborne disease, typhoid, that I ended up getting. And as a result of that, my left eye was in a state that needed an operation and treatment that wasn't available in rural Bangladesh. And my father was already working in the East End of London. The idea was for us to join him as a family. We were already on our way. And when we arrived, the authorities saw us as undocumented migrants. So when my father, who couldn't speak English very well at the time, took us to an NHS hospital, the doctors wouldn't treat me because they said I don't have the right to be treated, when in fact I did. And my father, distressed, incredibly upset, not knowing what to do, having obviously seen me travel across from Bangladesh to the East End of London, desperately ill. And he did the one thing that he could think of, which on reflection was an act of genius, but perhaps it felt like an act of helplessness to him at the time. But he went to his local mosque in Brick Lane in the East End of London. And he said, look, I don't know what else to do. I'm leaving my daughter in your care, because the doctors won't treat her and she may not live. And as a result of that, the Imam put a community campaign together and a letter and a petition, took that to the hospital, And as a result of that, I was actually seen and treated. And now I could see through my right eye. This was the beginning of, I guess, what you would call campaigning and activism in my life.
Have you had, on the way up, as it were, situations like the ones that Agnes described, where your visual impairment was being used to hold you back?
It's always difficult to disaggregate my visual impairment from the fact that I'm also a woman, Muslim, person of colour, also working class. And I genuinely didn't know where my biggest perceived vulnerability was. Often I've felt that I'm being judged or assessed according to a different set of criteria than what is showing on my CV. It had to be streets ahead than my nearest competitor. And so that's often felt hard because you feel as though you have to prove yourself. Obviously, my childhood wasn't one that was easy. The manifestation of my blindness was the subject of ridicule, and let's call it bullying. People would bully other children and say, well, look, if you don't shut up, we'll ask Halima to come out and she'll do what she knows how to do with her left eye. But at the same time, I suppose it gives you a superpower, which is about understanding other people's vulnerabilities and knowing that not everybody who's walked into a room comes with the same confidence and with the same power or voice or strength that everybody else has.
That brings me back to Agnes in terms of understanding other people's vulnerabilities. Agnes, what was it that stimulated your interest in the way in which people with learning disabilities in Northern Ireland were being treated?
Go back to when I worked in the service for youngsters with criminal records. A number of those young people, I discovered very quickly, were people with a learning disability, were people with intellectual disabilities that hadn't been picked up, hadn't been taken into account. So it really felt to me that, yes, they had committed some crimes, but they themselves were victims that were not being understood. I then went to work with a charity supporting children with a learning disability. And the plans for their adulthood included young people having to go to live in nursing homes and residential homes. Now, I don't think anybody would consider that to be reasonable. And I suppose there's something about recognising as well that, wherever you find yourself in life, the only person who can get you out of that is yourself. And I suppose I applied that in many aspects of my life, because ultimately we were faced with a situation where in Northern Ireland the choices and options were so limited.
You more or less deinstitutionalised the way that people are treated, because that was, as you explained, the only option at that time.
That tended to be, and sadly in some instances still is, people with intellectual disabilities, people who are autistic, people with acquired brain injury, find themselves still locked away. They may not be called hospitals, but they are still locked away in centres, in buildings with lots of other people who you and I would not want to live. My motto is, if it's not good enough for me, and if I don't want it for me or my child or my husband, it's not right for anybody. I suppose I fundamentally believe that people aren't out to treat people badly. I don't believe that anybody gets out of bed in the morning and think, who can I harm today? But I do think there's a real lack of education, of people understanding the needs of other people. And that's often because those of us with disability have for many years been hidden away. So how can we expect people to be understood? So I think a big part of it is showing people, proving to people that actually it can work. And there are words that I will not allow to be used. I certainly won't use words like can't. Where do you go when you say I can't?
I suspect this might be striking some chords with Halima. What drew you into the issue surrounding foreign aid?
Initially, it was quite simple, Peter. It's because I led such a sheltered life. I wanted to see the world. ActionAid gave me that chance, really, to not only see what the rest of the world felt like and what it was like to live and work in it, but to shape it, because I began to see so much lies ahead that needs our support. Whatever small part we play in it, it still needs our support and solidarity. It was due to the solidarity of community in East London that I was able to save sight in my second eye. So I already sort of had in me, I guess, that sense of wanting to be part of a global community or a local community and how you come together. There was a risk appetite there as well, because I was growing up at the time with a sense that the world was very uncertain and quite dangerous. Part of me wanted to see if I could be part of a peace building effort. And I thought it would be straightforward, but it wasn't, because even when I was in a role, if you can imagine, when you applied in a pool to be part of a team that would be responding to an earthquake, somebody somewhere would be doing a risk assessment of whether I can hit the ground running. And they'd be making all sorts of judgments about what hit the ground running means for me. But that's what I wanted to do. And I guess given my perceived vulnerability of visual impairment, people probably thought there were far, quote, safer jobs for me to do. I didn't want safety. I actually wanted those roles where I felt like you could make that immediate difference. You did your very best that day to bring some relief to somebody else's life that was at a very bad state at the time.
Agnes, you clearly recognise that. It's this business of making a difference, which seems the two of you have in common.
For a lot of the people we support, there is no support out there. You have to be in absolute crisis to get support. So in many ways, I feel very, very lucky, but I do feel that the experience I have probably helps me to be a better, more effective, more empathetic chief executive.
So maybe there should be more visually impaired chief executives, really.
Absolutely. And that would be quite fun, wouldn't it? Bumping and banging into each other.
Halima, how do you cope with resistance to change, or indeed to resistance, to getting countries or organisations to spend money on aid? With what attitude do you go into that?
There's a very simple answer to that. So as a younger person, I wouldn't take no for an answer. But as a slightly older, more mature person, I got to understand that sometimes you have to say no because there might be a reason for saying no. In the initial days, it was important to say no and stand up and resist, because that gave you the courage and also sort of defined your character for some of the much bigger, larger challenges that lie ahead. If I only went with the blows and rolling with it, I think I'd lose my sense of inner values. So I think one lesson I did learn throughout the years is you've got to lead from your front line, wherever that front line is, because if you only led from a place of safety, you'll implode along the way, because the world is quite uncertain.
Amongst the jobs you've been trying to do is get aid into Gaza.
That's it, Peter. There's a whole complication around the fact that the current government in Syria may or may not be in favour with the current government in America. And so the rules around how you transport aid changes overnight. And yet you're running projects where thousands, if not millions of people depend on that life-saving aid could be in jeopardy. So, how you deal with resistance in that context really determines whether somebody lives or dies. You've got to make that decision on the spot. And I think the only way you can make decisions like that is if you lead from the heart and from the front line, because we don't have the luxury of thinking about red tape and bureaucracy. We've got to think on a set of principles and where your North Star is. And the North Star is always your humanity.
Well, not everyone's going to be a chief executive, but most people feel they ought to have the right to a job. You've each reached the top of your tree and you fought for the things that you believed in, and yet unemployment figures amongst blind and partially sighted people have hardly improved at all over the time that you two have been working. Why do you think that is, and what would you say to visually impaired people who either haven't got a job or even when they have, don't think they're being given the opportunities they deserve and could cope with?
It is really disheartening when you look at the figures. I think believing in yourself is easier said than done. When I spoke earlier, I talked about the words that came from my mum's mouth when I was 16 years of age. My mum was a very, very quiet person. She would not speak up in any situation. I was shocked when she spoke up that day and challenged my careers teacher. And that begun, I suppose, my sort of sense of belief in myself and belief that I could do it. And I do think, for example, our education system does not lend itself very well. Immediately you've got a disability, I think people's expectations of you are very low. I think that's very difficult. I also think that people don't understand how best to support some of the visual impairment. And it's all about you can't. If you can't see, you can't. If you can't see, you can't ski. You can't drive Land Rovers. I have done all of those things. It is something that I had to prove to myself that I could do. People with disability across the piece experience real difficulty finding employment, because I think we pay lip service to discrimination legislation and so on, rather than asking people, how can we support you? If we say yes, then we can scratch our heads and say, but how? And I think if employers really set themselves that task, I think they would find that it actually works 9 times out of 10.
Halima, has she said it all?
I think we can never say enough on this because, a child in my position where I was about 30 years ago would have had probably 25% chance of entering the workforce, never mind becoming a leader in it. So I think there's so much more to do. Agnes, it's amazing that you and I are where we are today. And I think it's down to us also to implement some of those changes. And we've got to take that really seriously. And the kind of style of leadership that I look forward to is the one that isn't going to kick away the ladders, right? So we've got to set up so many ladders behind us. So let's do more. Let's show up in all the places that we need to speak up. And let's also show the quiet ways in which we can show solidarity. Yeah. My father didn't run a vocal campaign about speaking up. He taught me how to campaign even when you don't know how to. There's power there. And I think if we could show power in visually impaired and blind people to have their own rights and show the way they can fight for their own rights, that's enough.
We're going to have to leave it there. Agnes Lunny, Halima Begum, it's been a delight to have you on. Do you think you might continue to compare notes in the future now we've brought you together?
I'd very much like to, Halima.
I'd love to, Agnes. Solidarity. So lovely to meet you.
I think we share a lot in common, and I think I could learn a lot from you as well.
That's it for today. We could have gone on for an hour. Any comments or any suggestions about what else we should be covering or who else we should be talking to are more than welcome. Email in touch at bbc.co.uk. Leave voice messages on 0161 836 1338. From me, Peter Wight, and producer Fern Lulham, and our guests, goodbye.
Scaffolding and Skips News, week commencing 7th of March. Newport area, 1 Holyrood Street, Fabian Barber's Shop, Pyle Street, Lichfield House, 19 Union Street.
Ryde area, Castle Street, Ryde area Skips, ABRI, Madeira Road Seaview, The Lodge, Ferry Road Seaview, and 11 Hamilton Road, Binsted.
Cowes area, 72D High Street, Cowes area Skips, 39 Newport Road, 23 Fellows Road, Kings Road, East Cowes.
Ventnor area Skips, Shore Road Car Park.
Shanklin area, the Crab Inn, Chine Hollow, 28A High Street, 29 High Street.
Freshwater area, 3 Cliff Hall Buildings, High Street.
Sandown area, 3 Fort Street.